My name is Prisca. I'm a money coach, and I'm joined here today by Noha and Cassandra. We'll all introduce ourselves in a sec. And the whole purpose of this event we want to host for you guys is called Stress Hungry and Over Budget. And the whole goal is to help us attack overwhelm. So we know overwhelm can slowly creep in when we're feeling pulled in many directions, and especially for women, we have a lot of different hats that we're wearing, a lot of different things that we're doing, and sometimes we come last and it causes a lot of stress. So we're trying to make things a little bit simpler, a little bit less stressful, take the edge off. That's our goal today. So just to give a overall idea of what's going on today in terms of content, we're going to introduce ourselves, how to address stress and decision making, how we actually meal plan to be successful, because a lot of people do try and they struggle with it. And then also, how does this all tie in together when it comes to our finances? So while the session is going, we encourage you to ask questions, put them in the chat. We will address also the pre-submitted questions in the Q&A time. And then we'll also share how to connect with us. Okay, we're happy to be a resource for you guys. So by the end of this, you're going to learn how to stop reacting to stress with food and spending, right? Because we're going to manage our stress. And then we're going to start playing in a way that supports your health, your budget, and your mind. So I'll start with introducing myself. My name is Prisca, like I said before, and I am a money coach where I work with professional women one-to-one to create a custom budget that they love. It allows them to live their best life now while they're also securing their future. And with this budget, they're able to manage their finances with ease and grow their wealth purposefully. Very effective in terms of establishing consistency and systems with your money that makes it so basically things don't happen by mistake when it comes to your finances. And I'm going to pass it off to Noah.
Prep coach and kitchen strategist based in Montreal, Canada, and my mission is really to help busy women reprioritize themselves by reclaiming their time and their health and peace and stop defaulting to takeout. So essentially helping busy women learn how to cook more at home efficiently and while saving time, because we all know that busy people don't have a lot of time. So as the founder of Foodies in the Kitchen, I offer busy professionals a lot of different resources, including coaching, certain digital resources, and online group classes that'll help transform their cooking habits and have them eat more at home and take care of their health more.
And hello, everybody. My name is Cassandra Martin Hemmons of Master Your Stress. I'm a licensed social worker and certified stress management coach, and I help primarily midlife women who are stressed out, overwhelmed, feeling pulled in all directions, learn how to decrease their stress and add self-care into each and every day in a sustainable way. And I do this in a variety of ways, from my one-to-one stress management coaching, where you leave with a personalized stress management plan, digital courses, and also through my printable products. So it's wonderful to be here with all of you all today. And I guess I'll just get started. So you'll find that I'm a curious person, so I'm always full of questions. And I just want to know, have any of you ever had a day when you were stressed out, hungry, tired, and just thought, you know what, I cannot think about dinner or money or anything like this right now? If that's you, nod your head or put a yes in the chat. Like, have you ever felt like that before? Well, I think most of us had, and it's not about willpower, it's really about your capacity. Because when your brain is overloaded, then even making simple decisions like what to eat or how to plan or whether to click add to cart can feel way harder than it should in the long run. So today we're going to talk a little bit about why that happens and how to plan for stress before it pushes you into making decisions that you might regret later. So I want you to just take a moment and think about, when was the last time that you were so stressed out that making a simple decision about food or money just felt like way too much? Just, keep that in the back of your mind and think about when that happened last. So most of us definitely here who have had that moment, might have been this week, it might have actually even been today, but it's because everyone who's here is capable and we're busy and we're tired. So sometimes it makes it difficult for us to make these decisions. And a lot of reasons why people, especially women, end up so stressed out is that they're just pushing through emails, meetings, deadlines, and you're still showing up to do all the things. And when you do that, you get used to being stressed out all the time. Stress kind of becomes like your baseline level. But the problem with that is that stress really starts showing up in a lot of different ways, in a lot of ways that you don't like. So you end up having things like decision fatigue, where you're like, I don't care, just order anything, doesn't matter, just whatever's there, we'll have that. Or you're short in patience and you start snapping at your family and friends, your loved ones. Or you have mental fog. You know what? I just can't think about this. These numbers, they're spinning around, they're making me crazy. I'll just have to deal with this budget later. And pushing through is a strategy, but the problem with it is that it does work until it doesn't. So that's why it's really important for you to have a plan for your stress before you get there. Because the problem with just kind of pushing through everything is that it relies on things like motivation and willpower. And we all know your motivation might be really high today, but motivation and willpower are things that can fade over time. And I'm sure Prisca and Noha will get into this more. But when you're stressed and your motivation and willpower have faded away, that's when you're way more susceptible to making kind of wacky decisions about food and money. And so those are usually called things like, stress eating. Like, I'm eating my stress today because, someone just pissed me off. So I'm just going to eat this entire cake. Or, you know what? I'm just so upset and stressed. I'm going to go and engage in some retail therapy because I deserve to have a shopping spree. And those are the kinds of things that we don't want to have happen. So, one of the things that you can do is to plan for those times instead of just relying on your willpower or your motivation. So, if you find that being stressed out is something that happens to you regularly, you can notice if you spot some kind of a pattern. So, by that, I mean, as you think about the times when you're feeling most stressed, does it happen during certain situations? So, for example, is it happening more at night when you come home and you've worked so hard and you're exhausted and a pint of ice cream is calling your name? So that becomes your dinner. Anybody here has been there? Raise your hand. I mean, well, okay, for me, it's not so much a pint of ice cream. It might be like a cake or cookies, which, I probably shouldn't say in front of Noha, but it's true. It happens. Life is life. But you might also have a situation where maybe you've had an argument with someone and you're pissed off. And while that's happening, the Amazon app flashes with some kind of a deal on something on your wish list. So you're like, oh, yes, I'm buying this right now. I deserve it. So if you're comfortable, drop one word into the chat. When do you feel like you're most likely to make a stress related decision? Late at night, after work, on the weekends, when you're facing deadlines? Like, when are you most likely to feel that stress? I'll say for me, it's most likely during the evenings and when facing deadlines from work. But it's important to kind of pay attention in the morning before work. Yeah, that's a tricky time for a lot of women because you're rushing around trying to get yourself together, your family together, make it out the door, get to work on time, or if you work from home, make it to your office in the house, get to work on time. It can be really stressful and a difficult time period. But once you start after work, yeah, that's another one because that's when you have those decisions. Yes, all the things. I like that, Ashley. But that's when you start having to make the decisions. Okay, like what are we going to have for dinner? And, is there homework to be done if you have children? How am I going to get myself together to be on time and do everything that I need to do so that I'm ready for tomorrow? So it's a lots of different time periods where there's lots of stress. But the good thing is that when you start noticing these patterns of when you're feeling stressed, you can stop blaming yourself and start planning for yourself instead. Because the problem isn't really that you need better discipline. The problem is that you really need better backup for yourself. So if you've ever thought to yourself that you just need to be stronger, you need to have more discipline, you need to have more willpower, let me let you know, it's just needing a backup plan in place. So instead of waiting till you're stressed and hungry and overwhelmed to figure it all out, what we do is we create a very simple stress action plan ahead of time. And what you're going to do is for the very first step, you're going to name your specific stress pattern. And we've already started thinking about that this evening when I was asking you to think about when you notice yourself feeling most stressed. So you can ask yourself, when am I most likely to order out or overspend? For some people, that might be late in the evening. For other people, maybe that might be on Sundays, after meetings, when you're hanging out with certain friends, when you're facing pressure or deadlines at work or home. Lots of different times when you can really feel that you're extra stressed, so you're going to overspend or just eat the stress. But you name that stress pattern. And then after you've figured out the pattern of when you're feeling most stressed, that's when you plan your support, which is how you're going to support yourself when those situations come up the next time. So in this instance, you'll say to yourself, to prepare for that moment, maybe I'll keep meals in the freezer for myself so that I don't eat like an entire bag of Doritos when I'm feeling stressed out. Or maybe I will do meal prep for a healthy meal or snack so I have something healthy to eat. Maybe I'll set aside some money so that I have a little bit of a buffer and can have a little bit of breather when it comes to thinking about things like bills. Or maybe I might do something as simple as taking a pause before I, eat something that maybe I shouldn't be or spend money that maybe I shouldn't spend. So I want to talk about one last thing. It's something that I call micro self-care. So a lot of people, when they hear the word self-care, they think about having a spa day or going on vacation or some kind of a big lifestyle change. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but when you're stressed and overwhelmed, you don't need something that's big and huge. What you really need is something small that's going to help you in the moment. Has anyone ever heard of micro self care? Pop an answer in the chat, yes or no. So, micro self care is really about being able to interrupt the cycle of stress before it kind of pushes you into making a decision that you're going to regret. So the thing that I like about micro self care is that it's made up of short activities that are really easy for you to incorporate into your day. There are things that you can do to help yourself if you're feeling stressed out in the moment. So the first thing that you can do, the first tool that you can use is taking a pause. Because when you're in the middle of being stressed out and overwhelmed, your body, your mind, your brain wants relief from that feeling of overwhelm really fast. And that's why sometimes we turn to stress eating or retail therapy because you get like a really quick hit of dopamine. But instead of reacting immediately to the stress, you can practice taking a small pause. So, for example, maybe you can take 3 deep breaths before you open that food delivery app. Or you can do things like meal prep, which Noha's going to talk a little bit more about later. But maybe you can prep meals so that you have something pre-prepared that's healthy on hand so that you can reach for that rather than going and spending and buying takeout. You can drink a glass of water before having a snack. Maybe if you're doing like ad hoc retail therapy, maybe you can wait a couple of hours or up to 24 hours before making an online purchase. Maybe put it in your cart, wait a few hours, days if you can, then come back to it and see how you feel. Do you still feel like this is something that you need to have right now? That pause that you take oftentimes can really help you change the decision that you were going to make. Another thing that you can do to help yourself right in the thick of things when you're feeling really stressed out is to do something physical. Because when stress really builds up, you feel the tension like in your shoulders and your head and your body, it can be really difficult for you to think clearly. So what you want to do is something really small, because again, we don't want it to be overwhelming. We want you to actually do it, but something small to help you reset those feelings of stress and calm your body down. So if you're at work and feeling stressed out because people are sending you like what crazy emails or something like that, maybe you can step away from your computer for 2 minutes. Or perhaps you can take a short walk outside or just around the house. Maybe you can do a stretch and stretch your shoulders, your body, your neck. You might do something like drinking a nice warm cup of tea to help yourself reset those feelings of stress. These tiny things, they're small, but they're mighty. These are things that can help your brain get out of survival mode. So, of course, as I said, I'm always curious. So, I want to know, what do you think would help you the most on a stressful day? Taking a pause or doing something to physically reset? Put your answer in the chat. Which do you think would be most helpful to you? Pausing or doing something physical when you're in the middle of a stressful day? I like that. Lydia said taking a pause before making the decision. Helen said the same thing as well. Oh, we're all on team pause. Ashley also said taking a pause as well. So yes, taking a pause. And when you take that pause, take a deep breath, woosah it out. It can help the tension release itself, and it can help you make better decisions, making decisions that aren't stress-based and anxiety-based. So yes, go team, go. I love it. Thank you, Lydia. Oh, Prisca says she agrees with all of them. Yes, using pauses all the time to make good decisions. Absolutely. I am thoroughly on team pause. It really can make a difference in the way that you deal with your stress. So I have one last thing before I wrap up. I have a free gift for all of you, and you'll see a little bit more about it later at the end of this. But it's an ebook of mine that's called 5 Minutes to Me. And inside of it, you'll find a collection of very simple stress relieving activities across 6 different areas of self care. And each and every one of them can be done in 5 minutes or less. So, whether you have 5 minutes between meetings, before dinner, at the end of the long day, you'll have a quick way of being able to reset yourself and take care of yourself. And if today's conversation kind of resonated with you and you really would like to have simple, easy, realistic ways of lowering your stress right away, I definitely invite you to download the ebook. And before I finish, I just want to remind you of something that's really important. Managing your stress does not, I'll repeat, does not require having huge blocks of time or completely overhauling your life. The thing that really actually makes a difference is the small moments where you take a pause, because I know we're all on team pause, and you support yourself before the stress completely takes over. And with that, I will pass it on to Noha.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassandra. Hi, everybody. Really happy to be here, although I wish I wasn't taking this call from my car in the middle of an ice storm, but fire alarms happen at the worst time sometimes. So if you hear any rain in the background, that's what's happening. So thank you so much, Cassandra, for your awesome conversation. I mean, I can relate to all of that. And feeling all of that stress is really part of what catapulted me into the world of meal prep, which I started around 17 years ago. And what happened was all that stress that I wasn't managing well during my doctorate had me end up gaining about 80 pounds because I was doing everything that Cassandra was saying that, we tend to do when we're not managing our stress. So with that, the first thing I do want to ask is when you hear the term meal prep, what is the standard image that comes to mind? Because I have a feeling that we're going to have to redefine this quickly. So, very quickly in the chat, what do you think of when you hear somebody talk about meal prep? If someone says, I meal prep every Sunday or whatever, what do you think they're eating?
Lydia says lots of time that I do not have. Ashley said eating the same meal repeatedly.
That's exactly what the standard thought behind meal prep is, right? I have to eat the same chicken and broccoli and rice every day. I don't want to spend 12 hours cooking on a Sunday. But the reality is that that's not really what meal prep is today. It might have been what meal prep was, say, 15, 20 years ago when the gym bros were trying to convince us that that was the way to lose weight. And so we all got on that train and we're eating things we didn't want to do, spending hours doing, all this cooking for things that we didn't even enjoy eating, right? But the main thing to know today is that meal prep is actually an umbrella term. And what it stands for is essentially any activity in the kitchen that's going to help future you eat better. Okay, so it's sort of hacking future you's stress. So, like Cassandra said, when we're super stressed out, we come home after a long day of work. We've already made thousands of decisions. We open our fridge. It might be empty or it might be full of groceries that we purchased but that we did nothing with. We take a look and we say, no, not today, right? I cannot make another decision. I'm going to order in or I'm going to take out, and that's just how it's going to go. And so when you meal prep, you're hacking that piece of your life. So you're going to say, I know that future me is going to be stressed out. So let me prep something for her so that she's set up for success. So what are the different types of meal prep out there? Because I bet you didn't know that there are at least 7, if not more. So the first one is your standard meal prep. So this is where you are making a certain meal that you are eating 2, 3, 4, 5 times per week. And it's not chicken, broccoli, and rice unless you love eating that. That's not what it is. It's something that you love to eat. So maybe it's a baked pasta casserole. Maybe it's something else that just really excites you. And so you make that and you're cool with it and you're happy to eat the same thing every day. But there are many people who say, no, not my jam. I don't want to eat the same thing every day. I don't even know what I want to eat on Thursday, let alone tomorrow. So like that's not my jam. And that's okay. What you can do is you can batch prep. And so batch prepping is essentially you making these large portions of something. Let's say it's a big soup. You have 8 portions of it, let's just say, and you keep 2 portions out in your fridge for those days where you feel like having soup for lunch or dinner, and the rest gets frozen. And then that's going to help future you who doesn't feel like cooking one day to have meals ready in the freezer. Okay, so when you batch prep, think of prepping a large amount of something that you don't want to eat right away, and you're going to freeze it. And the key here is to create recipes or to use recipes that are freezer friendly. Then you have component prepping or ingredient prepping. And so that's for those of you in the group here who absolutely don't want to eat the same thing every day, but you also don't want to cook every day. And so this is sort of what restaurants do. So they'll prep separate ingredients ahead of time. Let's just say you're prepping 2 proteins and you're prepping 2 veggies and you're prepping 2 carbs. You keep them all separate. And during the week, you assemble them into things that you're excited to eat. And so you use those items to create sandwiches and salads and soups and Buddha bowls and quesadillas and whatever it is that you want to eat. But then you're not cooking from scratch. You just have everything already cooked individually that you're assembling as you wish. So think of it as like the Tetris of meal prep. Then you have produce prep. And so I'm sure I don't even need to ask you guys. I'm sure that you have experienced buying a bunch of fruits and veggies once, from the grocery store, telling yourself you're going to be healthy this week and you're going to eat it all, putting it in the fridge with no plan, and then on day 5 or 6, you throw it all out because it's wilted and gross and moldy, right? So the way to avoid that is by produce prepping. And so that's also part of meal prep. So you bring your produce home, you wash it all, you dry it up, and then you either cut it, dice it, do whatever it is you want to do with it so that it's readily available when you want it. And so an example of that is something that I did this Sunday. So I've been having Big Mac salads all week. Okay. I'm obsessed right now. That's what I want to eat. But I knew that if I didn't prepare the components ahead, there was no way I was going to do it. So I bought all my lettuce. I washed it all, dried it, put it in my salad spinner, made sure it was super dry, put it in a bag with paper towel so that that could absorb any extra moisture so nothing would get soggy. Then I cut up all my onions and pickles and everything, put them in Tupperwares. I prepared the beef and I made the dressing, and everything is separate. And every evening when I make my salad, I just take all the produce that was already prepped and then the other ingredients that were prepped, put them together, and now my salad is ready in literally 3 minutes. Okay, so that's kind of what you're doing. Then for those of you who maybe the weakness, let's say that, or the challenge that they have the most is breakfast. Let's say you tend to go out and get muffins and pastries and all of that, and you really don't want to do that because it doesn't support your health. It doesn't support your goals, your finances. You can breakfast prep. So you can make overnight oats, and you can make baked oats, and you can boil your eggs in advance to make egg salad every morning, or you can make breakfast sandwiches. There are so many things you can do that will live very well in your fridge or freezer that will support your breakfast during the week. And then for those of you who have a sweet tooth, there's dessert prep. So dessert prep, in my opinion, also falls under meal prep because you're sort of hacking future use. So you're not making dessert to eat it now, but you're making it because you know that maybe it's that time of the month and in a few days you're really going to want chocolate and you don't want to go out there and get that pint of ice cream or a bunch of chocolate bars. You want something that's going to support your health, but still sort of tick the chocolate box. So you make a bunch of brownies and then you cut them up and put them in the freezer. That's meal prep as well. And then the last one is drink prep. And so a lot of people will say, I can't get enough water in my day. I just can't. I can't do it. I run out of time. And then at the end of the day, I realized I've drank like 2 spoons of water. So you can prep your drinks. If you don't like water, just prep some iced tea, some hibiscus, whatever it is that you like. You can prep that ahead and put it in your fridge. And then whenever you need it, you can just grab and go. So meal prep is anything that's going to support future you and is going to hack your future health and your stress and is going to just make sure that everything stays on track, whether it's health or budget or stress wise. Okay. So what are 3 steps you can take? So right now, these are 3 things you can do to set yourself up for success next week. So the first thing I would say, and these sound very trivial, but they actually make a huge difference when it comes to organizing yourself, especially when you're busy and overwhelmed and stressed out and you don't have 1,000 hours to do this. So step number 1 is every weekend, consult your calendar for the next week. Okay, take a look at your calendar and ask yourself, all right, how many times next week am I going to be eating out? Because the reality is that most likely you have a few lunches or a few dinners where you're eating out. And what that means is that you don't have to prep for those meals, right? And so that's going to save you time in the kitchen and is also going to save you money because then you're not going to be, making food that you're not going to eat that's going to end up in the trash and it's going to cause you frustration and it's going to waste your money and all of that. So step 1, look at your calendar, and this takes 30 seconds, right? Look at your calendar. How many meals do I need to prepare for? So if I have, let's say, 2 lunches out and 2 dinners out next week, I just need 3 lunches to prep and 3 dinners. So all of a sudden I'm making 6 meals instead of 10. That's going to cut my time in the kitchen by probably 20-30%, depending on what it is I'm going to do and what style of meal prep I'm going to use that weekend. The next thing is commit to a time where you're going to cook, okay? And try to stick to that time. So I've been prepping, like meal prepping for 17 years now, and my time in the kitchen is Sunday during the day. That's what it is. Every single family and friend, they know that if they call me on Sunday morning, I am in the kitchen cooking. And it's very hard to get me out of that unless I have some special occasion or I'm traveling or something's up, in which case I'm going to be flexible, of course, and I'm going to move it to another time. But try to commit to a slot so that your brain knows that this is prep time. And It doesn't need to be 10 hours or 12 hours. Absolutely not. My full meal prep for the week for my husband and I takes 2 to 3 hours. That's what it is. When I first started, it was more like 12, to be honest with you, because I wasn't effective. So it took me 10 to 12 hours every Sunday. It was a nightmare. But then I learned ways to be more efficient and to create things that I love to eat. And so that time got much smaller. And so that's something you can do too. With time, you're going to save more of that time. You're not going to be so stressed out about it in the kitchen once you have a strategy that works for your life. Maybe you love to cook and you're happy to spend 6 hours on a Sunday in the kitchen. That's totally fine. And maybe you can't stand it and 60 minutes are all you can fathom. That's okay too. Okay, so figure out what works for you and block your calendar. And the third thing is to menu plan. And I say this because a lot of people will go to the grocery store and will walk around and say, well, I just want to be inspired, right? Or I want to see what's on sale and I'll build around there. But the problem with that is that you end up either buying things you're not going to use because you have no plan, right? So you're going to buy things you're not going to use, or you're going to buy things that maybe you don't even really like, but you're buying them because they're on sale and you're like, when I go home, I'm going to figure out how to use this, but then you don't really figure it out. Or while you're walking down the grocery store aisles, you're going to say, oh yeah, this looks good. Let me buy this steak. And then you get home and you're like, wait, I needed like 6 other things for the recipe, which I didn't buy. So now do I have to go back to the grocery store or do I just, say, forget it, I'm not going to use it, right? So when you plan, again, you're hacking that opportunity at the grocery store to make sure that you're saving money and that you're being super efficient, because most of us don't want to spend 2 hours walking around the grocery store. And most of us definitely don't want to be going to the grocery store 5, 6 times per week. So sit down and ask yourself, all right, how many meals do I have to make? What do I feel like eating next week? And you don't have to be the type of person who says like, oh, I have a feeling on Thursday afternoon I'm going to want to have a burger. You don't have to be that person. Some of us, and like for me personally, I sort of force my mind into it. So I'll say like this week, I'm having Big Mac salads because I feel like it and I love them. They don't bother me. I actually really enjoy them. I look forward to them. So 4 or 5 days this week, I'm having Big Mac salads for dinner. That's what I'm doing. But if you're not that kind of person, you can just say like, oh, I think we'll have tacos on Tuesday and we'll have soup on Wednesday. Okay, great. So now you know that. Pick your proteins if you're going to component prep, right? Pick your proteins and make sure those proteins are, let's say, transferable between the different types of things you want to eat. So don't say, for example, I want soups on Monday, salads on Tuesday, and let's say quesadillas on Wednesday. Meal one will be beef, meal two will be chicken, meal three will be tofu. And now you have to buy those 3 different proteins, right? Try to think of it as, okay, all my lunches this week will be some form of chicken. All my dinners this week will be some form of tofu or beef or whatever it is you like. But I'm going to Tetris them into different types of meals. So make a plan, sit down, figure out what you kind of want to eat so that you have a plan for the week. And from there, build out your grocery list. Okay. And that will help you when you go to the store to buy exactly what you need, no more, no less, keep you organized and keep you on budget. Now, on that note, if you want a tool that's really going to change how you cook, there is something that you can look into, and it doesn't have to cost you any money at all. But before I do that, I have a question for you. So right now, if you are the kind of person who cooks, where are your recipes stored? So you can just put it in the chat. So say it's a Sunday and you want to cook, or it's a Monday evening, where are you going to grab your recipes? A lot of people will bookmark, absolutely. Paprika is great. I love that. Thanks, Lydia.
Helen said, oh, go
some
ahead.
of her phone, Pinterest, and books.
Yeah, that's it. So a lot of people where they'll put their recipes are either in their browser, they'll save recipes on social media, they'll put things on Pinterest, they'll have some printouts in a binder somewhere, and essentially your recipes become everywhere, right? They're all over the place. And it's not ideal. It makes your cooking a nightmare. And so one of the tools that'll change how you cook is a recipe manager app. So Lydia mentioned Paprika, but there are many different ones out there. And so what a recipe manager app is an app where all of your recipes are stored. And so it makes your life so much easier and more efficient, because when you come to cook, you open that app and you just type in whatever protein, let's say. So let's say you say ground beef. You type in ground beef, and all of a sudden, all of your recipes with the word ground beef in the title are going to pop up. And all of a sudden, instead of saying, oh my God, where was that recipe? What was it that I liked? I can't remember. Let me check the 12 places where I have things saved. All of a sudden, you're going to say, oh yeah, that's the one. And in 2 seconds, your decision is made. And the nice thing is with a lot of these recipe manager apps is that You can export a grocery list out. So instead of you sitting there writing everything down, it comes out automatically. You can quickly check off the things you have at home, and then you take your phone and go to the grocery store and this will change your life, I promise you. So about 10 years ago, I was the person who had things saved everywhere. I had the binders, I had all the things. And then I downloaded this app. So for me personally, I use Paprika, but you can use whichever one. And ever since then, it's made my life leaps and bounds simpler. Okay, when it comes to cooking, it's made planning so much easier. Now, when I'm sitting in the car as my husband is driving to wherever, I can quickly say, okay, you feel like chicken or meat? Do you feel like whatever? Type it into the chat, we're into the app, and we're done. Okay, so really consider a recipe manager app. If you Google that term, you will find several options out there, and you can test them out and see which one feels best for you. And then as I wrap up and as we segue into Prisca's talk about money, let's quickly look at food and money, because why does this matter, right? So we've covered the stress piece. When you're stressed out, you tend to make bad decisions. So by meal prepping and prepping your food ahead, you're hacking future you and making sure that you make good food decisions. But what about the money piece? So let's say you're going to work tomorrow and you don't have any meals prepped at home and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to eat out all day. Fine, no problem. You grab a coffee and a muffin, and then you want to be healthier, so you grab a salad with maybe a diet soda. And then you come home and you open your fridge and you're like, oh, no, 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 I'm not going to make a decision right now. I'm too tired. You order pizza and you end up spending, let's say, around $66. Okay, no big deal, right? But then you eat all those same things another day and they're prepped at home. So you grab your coffee from home. You've made a batch of muffins on Sunday. So you made a bunch of muffins. You just grab one every single day. You have your salad from home that you bring and a can of soda. You've bought a big case and you just grab one from home and bring it to work. And you come home and you're like, okay, I'm going to make pizza with dough that I prepared over the weekend and froze. So it's going to take you 5 minutes to put together. This now costs you $19. And if you look at this, you're like, okay, cool, no big deal. But on a day-to-day, that's a $47 difference. On a week-to-week, it's a $235 difference. And on a month-to-month, it's almost $1,000. And when you zoom out and look at the entire year of eating out all day, every day, and we're not even including weekends here, we're looking at spending over $11,000 per year extra on food that I'm willing to bet doesn't always make you feel good and maybe contributes to brain fog and weight gain and all sorts of things. And so, of course, nobody is going to be very black and white and either be completely on the left side of eating out all the time or completely on the right side of eating home cooked meals all the time. But even if you were to eat out, let's say 80% of the time or 70% of the time, you're still going to be spending $7,000, $8,000 extra on things that you don't necessarily love. So try to consider an 80-20 rule where you're cooking at home 80% of your meals, even 70% of your meals, that's fine too, with 30% of like fun foods outside. And so I'm a major foodie. I love eating out. I love trying different restaurants, but the majority of our food is prepped at home. Okay. So with that, I'll leave you to Prisca, who will talk to us a little bit more about the financial piece.
I love me some meal preps. I enjoyed learning some of these strategies that you shared, Noha. Literally, to me, meal prep is like a lifesaver. So let's talk about money. All right. So when we talk about our finances, I think that on a list of things that people get stressed out about, money is like way up there, right? And I am of whole belief that that is completely unnecessary. But it does take planning and strategy for us to get there. So let's first talk about how stress affects spending. So a lot of times when we're overwhelmed, we're tired, we're running behind, our brain is just looking for relief, right? And like Cassandra talked about earlier, that could lead to just making a decision to quit that quick dopamine hit, but it's not really fitting in our budget. It's not in a strategy. Sometimes we're ordering takeout just because it's easier. We grab a convenience food at the store, or we just add extra things to the cart because we deserve the treat, right? And not that there's anything wrong with doing any of these things, but they are reactive, right? Instead of planning ahead or being proactive, like Noah was talking about, taking care of future you. And so reactive spending tends to cost more because when you're in your feelings, who gives a crap that the thing you're trying to buy is like 4 times the cost, perhaps, than you would get it at the grocery store, right? Versus going to either a convenience store or going to takeout restaurant, fast food restaurant. Like you probably get the same thing at the grocery store, but because you didn't plan ahead for the thing, Like, I want it now. I don't care how much it costs. I just need to feel better, right? So in that circumstance, we see how people, a lot of times, we know the cost of things are more expensive now, but if we don't manage how we're feeling, especially, then it's going to be even more challenging to deal with all the inflation, all the costs that we encounter day to day. So why in particular do last minute food decisions cost more? It's because you're likely choosing the most expensive option possible. Even when you're thinking about like how the grocery store works, right? You know, the more prepped something is for you, the more expensive it is, right? So if we could plan ahead of time, we could see, okay, like if like she was talking about batch ingredient prep. If you, instead of buying the frozen onions, right, that's already chopped up for you, if you froze your own onions, okay, well ahead of time, how much would that save you? So when we are in our feelings, we are likely to make the more expensive choice. That's takeout instead of a planned meal. Quick grocery trips, like where you're going to, like, oh, I forgot that, like Noha mentioned before, oh, I forgot this thing, oh, I forgot that thing. And then you'll run to the grocery store and you know you're not going to just pick up the things that you put on that list, right? Or you had in mind. You're going to see that other thing that's like, oh, yeah, I love that. You know, I love grocery stores. I love all the colors, okay? And so it's, you know, if you don't manage that, then it's going to get you, right? And that's their whole goal. These things are psychologically put in place in the stores in order to make you buy more. So don't think you're going to go in there with your feelings and come out a winner, okay? They're here to get you. So the more we can plan ahead, having that list, knowing what we're going to do ahead of time, the less we're going to get caught like that. And then also getting convenience food rather than ingredients. And individually, these decisions don't necessarily seem like a big deal, like Noha mentioned before, but over the course of a week or a month, they add up quickly. Now, she mentioned 11,000. If I were to hand you $11,000, would you be mad? Like, you'd be like, no, Prisca, you can have it. You can keep it. No, you don't want that. So how about you give yourself that $11,000 by planning ahead, right? And again, like Noha said, there's a lot of, you know, synergy between what we're all saying here. We're not trying to put you on one side of the spectrum where all you do is, you know, eat food you make at home. It's okay to have convenience foods. It's okay to have comfort foods, but it's good to have these choices made ahead of time instead of in the moment. Right? So now, how does food planning support a real life budget? So a budget works if it fits how life actually happens, right? So when you plan for your food, you reduce last minute spending, you buy ingredients intentionally. And by even talking about ingredients intentionally, this may include like looking at your store's circulars to see what's on sale and then planning your meals around that. So that way you can maximize your savings. All that intention makes it so much easier to save your coins. Make your grocery trips more predictable and build flexibility in your week, right? So again, I think Noah mentioned before too, like sometimes you just come home and you're not feeling the things. Having something that's already, like if you prepped it already, like you have a soup that you enjoy that's put in your freezer for when, you know, you come home and it's like, I can't even deal with this. I just need to put something in the oven or heat it up so that way I can eat it. It's there, right? So you're building in flexibility, but it's all because you're planning ahead. So you don't need to do this perfectly in order to be successful. We're all going to mess up sometimes. And I don't even consider them mess ups. Okay, we're allowed, right? Life sucks sometimes. And sometimes we need to comfort ourselves and do things that just not necessarily, you know, in the cookie cutter strategy way, but it does, but you just don't want that to be the majority of what you're doing. Okay. So you want to give yourself, your future self, fewer stressful decisions to make. Now, when we prepare for this, we can reduce money stress during the busy weeks, during the emotional weeks. Something I keep in mind too is that if I know I'm going to have a particularly stressful or busy week, like maybe if I went away for the weekend, right? That might be the weekend where I choose to order a meal prep kit, you know, that comes to the house rather than do something from scratch. Because if I'm coming home Sunday night and I got to work Monday, I got to do something about that. I don't want to sit here and be overwhelmed. Like I got to go to the grocery store after I land. These are the ways that we're thinking ahead, right? Other things, like Noha mentioned before, is having backup meals. So I want to get on that train, like putting big meals together and then just stocking some away for the future. That'll help deal with these stressful times, these busy emotional weeks. Put takeout in your budget, right? Rather than letting the takeout happen to you, you have to do the takeout, All right. So build a dining out into your budget. Don't presume like because you're paying off debt or you have these other goals that are competing that no, I'm going to cut out all eating out. If you've been successful in that, kudos to you. But if you have not, you need to build it in your budget. Okay. And also just having comfort foods that are already at home. So if there are things that you know that you enjoy, you like having in the house, just keep it in the house, instead of worrying about like, oh, I have the urge now to go run to 7-Eleven or Wawa to go get it. Like just keep it in the house. That way you have it. And the whole idea is not for the ultimate control, but it's to reduce the number of decisions you have to make when you're already overwhelmed, right? Because that's life. There's always going to be something going on. The kids are going to be doing something. The husband's going to be doing something. The job's going to be doing something. There's always something going on. Our government's always doing something, right? So how about we manage what we can control, which is one of my big mantras. Is like, we can control what we can control. And I'm going to do my best at that. Not getting it perfect, but to help reduce the amount of stress down the line for me. All right. So that's why, food planning is not just a kitchen strategy. It's also a money strategy. It's a stress management strategy. And when you combine that with what we discussed earlier, the meal prep, the stress management, then life in general feels more manageable. And that's why it was important to me to bring all these ladies together. I skipped meal prep 1 week. And I was like, the amount of decisions I had to make that week, I was like, this is unreal. People do this every day. Like, I can't even, like, what am I eating for breakfast? What am I eating for lunch? I cannot. Okay. So the amount of stress that has decreased in my life because I've created certain systems, I want to make sure to impart that, and find ways to make it easier for you. It doesn't always have to look like Noha said, like you are sitting in the kitchen for 10 hours. You will not find me in the kitchen for 10 hours. Okay. But I will find ways to make this accessible to me. So that is, for example, when I talked about if I know there's no way meal prep is going to happen, ordering a meal kit and make sure that it's at the house when I land home from that plane and I have to go to work the next day. So making these things manageable, accessible, that's what it's here for. Okay. We're going to wrap it up here. If you have any questions about any of our sessions, please feel free to put that in the chat. And here, we just want to address some of the questions that were pre-submitted. And so I will start by, okay, someone asked, I'd love a good budget template to follow. Okay, I have an answer that people may not love. I don't believe in budget templates, okay? Because the way I've experienced budgeting is that my life does not fit something that someone else created, right? So when you, like, let's say I give you a budget template, the person that lives in New York and the person that lives in Kentucky, it's not going to work the same. Okay. So I'm a very big fan of customizing a budget for your life. However, everybody's got to start somewhere, right? And so the way I started, first of all, is to track how I'm spending now. So I would recommend seeing how, like, in the next 30 days, how is it that you're spending? What is being spent on your wants, your needs, and then how much is going like towards your goals, like your debt payoff, your saving and investing, that kind of thing. See how your income is actually breaking apart there. How is that panning out? Then you're like, okay, this is my baseline. Is this where I want to be? So let's say, I'm going to use a typical budget template example. Okay, though I'm not a fan of it, but just for ease, like 50, 30, 20, right? Let's say your 50 is supposed to be your needs. Let's say your budget says you're spending 60% on needs. Is that okay? Like, what do you feel about that? If that's completely necessary, you're fine with it, fine, leave that. If it's not, then this is where you're going to start tweaking. Like, what can I change? Utility bills, housing costs, car note, car insurance, all these things fit into the needs. Those things, is there anywhere I could tweak that to make that, fit better? Get me to 50% or 55%. The other thing is, now that you have this, like, how do we make sure we even stay on track? Is I personally I use a spreadsheet so that when my income comes in, I'm like, this is how every single paycheck is going to be divvied up. Okay. That's based on my custom plan. And when I make custom plans for my clients, they all have their own. Like, okay, when you get paid, this is what you do with your paycheck. So you can create something like that. It'll make it a lot easier, in my opinion, because that way, like, okay, I get income, I divvy it up this way, and all my needs are met because I created a budget that fits my life. And then there was another actual question. How to stay on budget consistently. This is still piggybacks off the first original thing. First, you create the budget that fits your life. You know, when you look at something like 50, 30, 20, and your life doesn't fit that, and you try to force yourself to fit that, it creates a miserable existence, okay? And then it becomes challenging to keep it. And then when you fail at it, you call yourself a failure versus the budget's the failure, right? Because it was never right to begin with. And then it creates a cycle of I hate budgeting, you know, I'm never good with money. There's a whole little mental thing that goes with it, right? Let's not say that, right? Let's create the budget that fits our life. So see where you are now. Again, where are you spending your money now? Take a look at it. Don't judge it, okay? Just take a look, assess it like, okay, this is where things are going. Those are the facts as it is. And these are the things I want to change, and then build your budget that way. Let's see, there was another one. I think this is a Noha question. How do you eat well enough to have energy for work? What would you say, Noha?
That's a great question. So that comes into play when you're planning ahead, right? So you want to make sure that your plates or whatever it is you're eating are well balanced. That's the first thing. So you want to make sure that every dish that you have or every meal that you have has some protein, has your carb source, has fat, has your, what are we missing? Your veggies, of course, your veggies. Okay. And that's because all of those things each have a different function when it comes to how your brain works. And so I have given talks before about how food is a productivity weapon and how it actually helps you think clearer and work better and have more energy. But that's when all of those four items are in check. So if your lunch or your dinner, let's say, is a bowl of pasta with no added protein and maybe no fat because you're avoiding fat and you don't have time for protein, so you literally just have the carbs, and maybe the only veggie in there is your tomato sauce, it might taste good, but that's not necessarily going to support you as much as a whole, let's say, pasta dish could, where you have the pasta and the sauce, but also maybe some meat or some grilled chicken, as well as a fat source as well. So maybe you're adding some olive oil or some butter there, and all of a sudden your dish is more balanced. So always think of balance and always think of having those four components in every meal, and that should really support giving you enough energy to eat well while you have to work.
Anybody has any follow-up questions, please feel free to throw in the chat. How to break a pattern of debt repayment, then using credit cards again when it looks like money is available to spend. I gotta tell you something. Your credit cards is not your money, okay? So what I've seen people do is like when they pay off debt and then they use the available credit as if they have cash. That is not a fact, right? When you are using credit, you are borrowing money. I have no opposition to using credit. I love my credit cards, but I use my credit cards as a debit card, meaning I know that sucker's gonna get paid off, right? It is not bailing me out. It is a tool. Now, if you are in a debt repayment journey, some of the things, so one thing that's usually lacking that makes people cycle through debt and debt payoff and debt and then debt payoff and debt payoff is the fact that they don't build savings into their plan. So there's creators out there that will say like, oh, you know, all you need is to have a little bit of savings, like $500, $1,000, and then put everything else towards debt repayment. That is a fool's errand, okay? Because what emergency only costs $1,000 in 2026? I don't know. Like everything costs at least $1,000 in my opinion for in 2026. You know, the pet's vet bill, never less than $500 as far as I'm concerned. You know, I just had HVAC come in. It was like $400 for nothing, okay? Literally, he pressed the button and solved the problem. $400. So if you have a real emergency, what is that $1,000 going to do for you? So here's how I recommend people manage debt and savings. So let's just say, for simple math's sake, you have $100 extra to put towards all your goals, right? This is simple math's sake, okay? Obviously, you need more. But if you want to cut the cycle of debt repayment, then debt payoff, debt accruing, all that, you're going to take some of that money and you're going to decide, based on what's comfortable for you, how much of that $100 is going to go towards debt and how much is going to go towards savings, okay? So this is obviously customized to you. How do you feel? Where are you in your savings journey? But you want to split that, right? Do not put everything you got into debt and leaves nothing for savings. Eventually, your goal is to have six months about, for most people on average, of emergency savings. That's going to take a long time to acquire. But while you're on that journey, you can crush the debt, right, with the other part of that $100, but still building it up, right? So that when things do come up, and things are going to come up, okay, unless your debt payoff journey is like in 2 weeks, which of course is not, right? It always takes time. Then something's going to come up and you're going to need cash, and you're not going to have it if you don't do this. So that's how you stop this cycle of like, I'm running into debt, I'm using my available credit. If you don't have the cash for it, it's not yours. Don't do it. Okay. If you can't manage, also, like some people, they're not great at managing credit where they act like it's a debit card. Sometimes it's good to pause and actually live on debit, even though, of course, we know the protections that credit cards can give, which make people more attracted to it and want to do it. But if it's something you can't manage right now, you need to get your spending under control, you need to keep a tight lid on what you're doing, then I give you full permission, okay, to just stick to debit until you get a grasp of how you spend and like what your limitations are. And then you could go back to credit if it makes sense, okay? And there was another question. Emotional eating and the connection to money. You want to start this off, Noha?
I'm just gonna extrapolate here. So, how emotional eating maybe leads to spending more potentially. And if that's what it is, it's sort of what Cassandra alluded to in the beginning, is that when your stress is high and when your emotions are out of balance, which we all face constantly, if nothing is readily available for you, you will end up spending more money, right? So that's essentially what I would say is like hack that future you. So hack that future emotional eating, hack the future bad mood by having things that you love to eat readily available. Okay.
And so the other thing I'd just like to add, which on my portion of the talk kind of covered this, is that, emotional eating, that's the most expensive dollars you're probably ever going to spend, right? In the sense that when you buy that thing, it's probably going to be in the most convenient way possible for you and with a markup because somebody else prepared it, they're paying their staff, all the things that come into it, right? So those are going to be your most expensive dollars. So ideally, if you can prep ahead, knowing that we're going to have these emotions, even sometimes people can follow their cycles and see where their energies and stuff will ebb and flow, factor that in. Like, listen, if you are a girl who likes to eat cookies, when Miss Flo is coming, buy the cookies ahead of time. Like, there's no reason to have to run to the store to get them, in the moment. Like, you have them on deck. Keep some in your car. Okay. I'm very big on fitness, so I have protein bars in my car, but it's just, you don't have to have protein bars. You don't have to be like that. But it's just the idea of like, if I'm hungry in the moment, I want to be able to have something there rather than looking for something to eat at the time. Okay.
Or
I
make
think
the cookies, Prisca. We can make the cookies ahead too.
you could. I'm not there yet, but you could.
We'll get there.
I believe there's one more question. How to know if you're hungry or if you are just stress hungry? That's a very Noha question.
I don't think you will like my answer, but when we're hungry, like really, truly, physiologically hungry, we will eat whatever is put in front of us to satiate ourselves, right? So if you're not sure if this like an emotional stress signal or if you really are hungry, ask yourself, would I eat an apple right now, right? Would I eat a bunch of cucumbers with like some vinegar on them? Something not super appealing. And if your answer is yes, then you definitely are hungry because you just want to make sure that you no longer feel that, right? But if your answer is, well, no, I don't want that. I want, stuffed crust pizza and fried chicken, then now we're talking about emotional hunger or stress hunger. And the other way to do it is if you do that and you get mixed signals from yourself, always, just you can have a couple glasses of water or a full glass of water and see that helps because sometimes when we think we're hungry, we're actually thirsty, and our body doesn't have a way to tell us the difference very well. So have a glass of water and then ask yourself if you're willing to eat an apple or a bunch of cucumbers or something boring like that. That could be delicious, but maybe not emotionally satisfying. And if the answer is no, you know what's up.
Yeah, that's always gonna give you pause, right? That's what we were talking about earlier. You pause, like, hey, it's funny because a lot of times I hang out with my family and they're like, oh, I'm starving. I'm like, here's something. No, I don't want that. You're not hungry. Leave me alone. Okay. Go do something else. Alrighty, so that wraps up our session. If you want to connect with us, we're actually going to send you these slides in an email in a day or two with all our contacts. That way you can continue to learn from us as we go on to support women in this journey. Our whole goal and purpose, okay, in each of our respective spaces is to make life easier for women because we deserve it, for God's sake. All right, we're holding up this world no matter what people say. All right, so it was a pleasure. Have a good night.
Thank
you,
you
everybody,
all.
for coming.